Today, I'm joined by Ernesto Gomez. Ernesto is an executive entrepreneur and author with over 30 years of leadership experience in the food service and consumer goods industries across the US and Mexico. In his roles as Vice President of Human Capital and Chief Human Resources Officer, he has led the global talent development and cultural transformations for tens of thousands of employees. He is the founder of Aspen Mindset One, a consulting firm focused on helping organizations and individuals reach their peak performance. He is the author of a new book called Regrowth: How Organizations Can Overcome Stalling by Unlocking Their People's Potential. Now, in this book, Ernesto provides practical insights on how to transform a company culture and unlock a collective mindset that fosters innovation and adaptability. And I am excited to have him on the show to learn from his deep experience. So, Ernesto, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jon. I'm very excited to be with you today. Thank you for having me in your show.
I am honored to have you on the show, sir. And you've had a long career and a long history of really, getting the potential out of people. You've written a book about it. I'm excited to talk to you about it. But before we dive into the questions, one of the things you mentioned to me before we got started is how you named your company, Aspen Mindset One. Could you tell the audience why you named it that? Because I think it's a fascinating story.
Yeah, it's really a metaphor about, how I see companies, evolving and performing. You know that aspen trees are, populate certain areas of the US, and you can see literally thousands of trees, very beautiful trees with kind of a shaking leaves. And you think they are independent trees, but they actually share a common root. There is a single living organism, which I think it's great, to see companies from that perspective. You may have different positions and roles and responsibilities, and still a very powerful single root that feeds life into the system and makes it alive. So I really use that metaphor to explain how I think companies, need to work in order to perform. You can have diversity, different opinions and roles, and at the same time a common root.
I absolutely love that. That's so good. It's such an important part of creating a winning culture, and you know that from your past experience as well. So, first of all, like what prompted you to write this book about unlocking human potential in organizations? What was the drive for this?
I've been, running businesses a long time. For 15 years, I was an independent. I had an entrepreneur. I had many businesses in the food service industry, both in the US and in Mexico. And then, out of a kind of a coincidence, I was asked to do a consulting job for a corporation. And then I spent 23 years, working in corporate environment. So I've seen, both sides. And leadership and how people, develop potential, it's really been fascinating to me. So much so that I've been speaking with CEOs, for a long time about their teams. And I asked them the following question. You have your team, you really pick them up yourself, or you validated that they belong to your team. Out of the potential that you think they have, what percentage do you think they are redeeming? In other words, potential, performance against real performance or actual performance. And it strikes me that the answer that I get the most is that in teams, people are redeeming about 50% of what they can do. So think about this. Before you have to, fight in the market, before you have to, battle regulations and competition and everything else that you have to face in the external markets, you have a wealth of talent sitting inside the company that is waiting to be on top. And it's a kind of a, and how do you say this? It's a self-provoked injury. So because you are allowing that as a leader in your team, if people are not really redeeming the percentage that they are capable of, then you have certain level of responsibility. And I wonder if there was a way to kind of wake up leaders and of course design a system that will create or nurture potential. And that's what prompted me to write this book. It took me about 6 years, you know, thinking about it, and then of course writing it. And I didn't want it to be too academic, uh, just because there are certain things that I've seen that can work in real life. And so I set up my journey to write about, what kind of talent you need, what kind of talent density you need in key positions, and how do you go about uh, unlocking potential in talent. And then, of course, the culture of the company, how that works. Culture is a very tricky issue because it's an intangible, but it has a lot of value. And and I think that leaders, us as leaders, don't spend enough time thinking about culture as we do, when we review KPIs and objectives and performance and revenue and profitability. But you really have to devote time to think about the culture on a regular basis. So mainly, what is stopping people from performing? Not necessarily what you can do and how you can nurture people to perform better. We have to start by removing the barriers that naturally exist in companies, because there are outdated processes, outdated guidelines or whatever that doesn't really work anymore. But they're just stuck, in the way a company performs. You have to review that. So I really recommend kind of auditing, all these procedures and systems, uh, kind of every couple of years to make sure that you're not, stopping yourself. And then the mindset, which it's always interesting how, if you believe that you can do something, you end up doing it. But if you believe that you can't, then you may end up not doing it. So there is a level of conviction and courage that really drives people to perform better. And there is a lot of written about, growth mindset and all those things that we all know about. But I was thinking about, well, what kind of identity do I have to develop, looking at myself as a learner, as a practitioner, and then what kind of perspective taking I need to be able to go from the micro to the macro, because we're also involved in tasks that we end up, just focusing on what is right in front of us. But we sometimes we really have to step back, a couple of steps and look at the system and say, what's happening here? Do I need to pivot or not, and why? And also another component of mindset that not necessarily seems to be a component, but it's agency. What kind of agency do you have to really pursue, to have the discipline and the resilience to keep on going? So I talk about all these things about, talent density, culture, and mindset, and kind of just share some stories and ideas of what has worked for me.
I love that. I think one of the things, when I wrote my books, my frustration was the amount of lack of engagement in corporate culture. We generally have about 30% engagement. So the idea that we have 50% potential is still terrible, right? And one of the things that's interesting in lean manufacturing, the Toyota production system, they say the eighth deadly waste, right? There's seven deadly wastes, but there's the eighth one is not getting people to work to their full potential. So that's considered a major waste in the company. And you've sort of identified this as sort of your North Star. This is a big deal. That if we could just bring out the full potential in employees, we can get so much more done in organizations, right?
I've been, trying to research, and unfortunately, I have not found any conclusive data about this. But I know that, not redeeming potential is one of the largest hidden costs
Yeah.
an organization has. I mean, if you're a reasonably well-run company, you probably can perform, 5, 6, 7% better. I mean, you can reduce costs, but only so much. It comes a time when you really hit a wall because, efficiencies are always there, but it's not really a double digit, thing that's
Yeah.
going to go back to the bottom line. So it's really the top line what you have to increase so to create margin. And really, when people are, unlocking their potential, that's when inventiveness, ingenuity, engagement, as you were saying. So you really want to go further than what it's typically, the horizon of possibilities, and then you go further. So I always wonder what needs to happen.
Mm.
And one of the things that I've been exploring lately is uh, there is kind of a two-way system. We normally can use a push leadership or a pull leadership. And this is a very oversimplifying a very complex idea. But in the push mode, which normally some of us felt very, comfortable doing this. You just kind of demand and push, and you never satisfied, and everything is wrong, and then you want more and more and more, right? And that may work for a while. Actually, it's required in crisis, you know, to take that
Yeah.
position. But it shouldn't be your default mode. It should be part of your toolbox when needed. I really think that the pull leadership, when you connect with your, you know, employees, and break a barrier and understand what drives them, what motivates them, what they're good at, and sometimes even get closer than sometimes people think it's allowed in a company setting. It really pays off because you create this bonding, and so switching and doing the push leadership only when needed, but making pull leadership your default mode, it's really what starts, the engine going.
Yeah, I love that you say that because I think that's one of my experience as well. Is I always say that leadership is about motivating a group of people to get something done, right? And we can motivate people through, like you said, a pushing system. Like you got to get this done by a certain date, and sometimes, like you said, in a crisis, it works great if you need to, right? In the military, it was the same thing. When crisis hit, top down leadership worked really well, right? Because we need to get things done fast, and we needed it to be done efficiently. But I think in general, what works better, as you mentioned, is this idea of pull leadership. And I've found that if we can get people intrinsically motivated, right, they're fired up about the vision of the company. They're fired up about what the company stands for. That you don't really have to do a lot as a leader, right, to get people excited. So if you can find people whose personal goals are aligned with the company goals and they're in the roles that they were put on earth to do, you recruit the right talent that is excited to be part of your company, excited about the vision you have. You don't have to do very much motivation at all. It's all intrinsic, right? They're excited to be, they're excited to contribute to the organization.
Yeah, I've been trying to, check many leadership definitions, and there are, I don't know how many,
A lot.
maybe thousands, right? And there is one that I find particularly, intriguing and really thoughtful. And it comes from an author, it's called Hitendra Wadhwa, which I think it's a professor at Columbia. I don't know if it's NYU or Columbia, but one of those two universities. And he says that leadership is getting the best out of you and getting the best out of people in the pursuit of a common goal.
Yeah.
It's so simple,
Mm.
so beautiful and perfect in my opinion, because it's just getting the best out of you and getting the best out of others. And if you start, seeing leadership from that lens, then your frame becomes, people have something to contribute, and what is that, and what is the best they can do, and then you start connecting, and that moves the needle, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I see that. I see your point. That it makes a lot of sense in my from my experience as well. That I've seen that as well. So one of the things you talk about is this idea of range. So what do you mean when you say leaders must develop range? I think is interesting.
Again, going through these leadership definitions, uh, the playbook sometimes tells you that you have to have a lot of conviction, right?
Mm,
And you have, as a leader, you have to have courage and conviction, and maybe you have to have a lot of empathy, stuff like that. But leadership really changes according to the situation. You know, shows me that you have to have a lot of conviction until you don't.
mm,
And you have to have a lot of empathy sometimes until the situation calls for a different, range. So, virtues and defects are really part of the same thing. And then you really sometimes being too how can I say, too disciplined can and stubborn pays off, but sometimes it's really, not the right road to take. So it depends. So you have to have a range to identify when you have to go through, this is a moment to be empathic. And this is a moment that I really have to say, you know what, I mean, this situation calls for this, and that. So that range, it's something that it's really difficult to grasp because it's not really intuitive. But as you evolve, you kind of know. You have a team, you have a group, and then you let them contribute up until the moment that you say, well, now I have to make the decision.
Mm, yeah.
I I checked, that part, but now I have to be decisive. Or no, or I have to stop and just keep on going because this is taking us somewhere. So that's what I mean by range. Identifying when you have to move to a different kind of pole depending on the situation. Uh,
Yeah, I love that you say that because I've mentioned it. Some of my writing is this idea of leadership as a balance, and you think that, oh well, empowerment's a great thing, right? But if you are empowering your people so much that you're absent, right? You're an absent leader, then you create problems in your team. But if you're too involved and you're micromanaging, that can create problems. But there are times when you need to be micromanaging, or where you need to watch the details a little closer, and there's times when you need to move to being a little more hands off. And I think what you say is range. I think of like a singer who can hit the low notes and the high notes. So a good leader can have that range and can operate in all the spectrum depending on where he or she needs to be at any particular time. Is that what you're referring to?
that's exactly right. That's why I say that perspective taking is so important as
Mm,
one of the components of mindset because you, I mean, I think your example is beautiful. Some people, and sometimes, you really have to take, responsibility for that. And it depends. The reality is that there is no a pure tone that works all the time.
mm,
So in leadership, perspective taking is so important so that you can, see the whole thing and read, what is called for, and then of course perform accordingly. And I I don't have a recipe, to know exactly how and when that happens, other than saying, you know what, you have to connect and you have to watch and observe, and then, decide what's called for.
mm. And would you say too, and at least my experience is that sometimes different individuals need different you need to use different parts of the range for different individuals. So I always liken the story to my two sons, right? When they played football, my oldest son loved to get yelled at. So when he gets yelled at, he smiled, he thought it was great. And my youngest son, whenever he get yelled at by the coaches, he would kind of get shy and quiet. So saying, two children born in the same family, raised the same way, react differently to stressors, right? And I think our employees do that too. So sometimes we have to use different parts of our range depending on the individual.
Exactly. And of course, the other is if you get close to the person, to the individual, and understand what really drives them, so that you can, provide that for their betterment. But you cannot do that, at least in my world, as a boss, you're supposed to have all the answers, right? You are the top, boss, and it's not really uh, kosher, to get closer to your people because you are in a leadership position and you're supposed to be have a hierarchy, and that really doesn't work.
No,
Uh,
not at all. Yeah.
Not at all. I mean, so what commonly, at least people from my generation, we made a lot of mistakes because of that, because you genuinely believed that that was your responsibility. I mean, you are the boss. But in an environment like the one we're living in right now, it's the opposite. You
Right.
really have to connect in order to, explore, understand, and grasp what people have inside them and play with that, in a good way.
Mm. So you mentioned that the idea that like roughly 50% of our we're capturing only 50% of the potential of employees today. What are some ideas or thoughts about how do we unlock more potential in our teams?
Well, and this prompts me a question because if I were to ask your audience and think about yourself, what percentage of your potential do you think you are redeeming? And you go inside yourself and say, I have so much to give. I know that, of course, the day has 24 hours and maybe we're swamped with emails, a lot of things to do, but still, we have a lot of, untapped energy and ideas and resources that we can tap. So if you think that about yourself, I can guarantee you that that happens with the people you're leading. They also have that same situation, and you can, work with that. In a team setting, typically individuals, are very important in a company because you hire an individual, but then you need them to perform in a team. And the basic unit of analysis in an organization is always teams. Individuals are important as long as they can, perform in a team. And in the book, I suggested, and this is just four basic elements. One, of course, we all know about psychological safety, the capacity to, feel included, to contribute, to learn, and to challenge. And if people don't have a way to speak up, and they are not allowed to speak up, then the team it's self-optimized. They're not performing well. The other component that I find it's important, it's ownership. Because if you don't own, and you don't fulfill the promise that you made and you don't own your problems, then it's very difficult to 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 have a team that performs. The other one, it's I call it truth versus ego, which is, you know, what are you looking for? To find the truth or to satisfy egos? Sometimes you have to, bite the bullet and say, you know what, this idea doesn't come from me, but there's another better idea that is going to work. And the team, it may belong to, a junior in the team, but it's a better idea. So how you balance that part, you know, you have to search for the truth, not for the ego. I love that, Steve Jobs, he also had so many I hear that have positive negatives, but one of the things that he wanted to be, it's not he didn't want to be right. He wanted to get it right, and it's different. To get it right may involve recognize that you are wrong. So in his team, he always wanted to get it right. And finally, a team is only as good if you genuinely want others to be successful within your team so that success spreads and you are willing to take the time to help others be successful, then the team is going to perform better. So those four things, psychological safety, ownership, truth versus ego, and helping others succeed, I think if you play with those, you will be surprised how teams can perform.
I love that. I love that. Those are great points. For really important points. And again, it's coming from decades of experience that you've had dealing with thousands of employees, and those are very powerful. Good summary of how to basically to increase the get the most out of your employees. How about like aspiring leaders, new leaders? We have a lot of young leaders listening into this show. What advice would you give them on how to grow in an organization, how to manage their careers, how to grow, how to get the most out of their teams?
There is a common frame that you escalate positions in organizations, right? You just go over and then this idea of ascending and really getting to the top by yourself. It's kind of our mental model about how we get a better position. But actually, in an organization, your team push you up. It's not you that really escalate or you trample over people to get to the VP position. So it makes sense to let your people push you. It
Mm,
makes sense to change your frame and say, listen, my success is going to be a function of the success of the team that I'm leading. So how can I nurture this team so that if they perform well, they're going to push me naturally? And I've seen a lot of young people that, they get fired up, into the company. They really have a lot of energy and fuel, and they're ambitious and they really want to escalate as soon as possible, which I think it gets you to a first level, but it
Hmm.
doesn't really, gets you to the top position because in the end, you don't escalate, you're pushed up. And if you take that position and say, well, what do I need to do to let my team pushing up, then you start making different decisions. And again, it's good to have energy. It's good to be, decisive, but at the same time, you have to be thoughtful about, how to nurture your team so that they can, do their job. That book, very famous, "What brought you here will get you there." That's exactly right. I
Yeah,
mean, the ideas that or the formulas that take you to a first level, very difficult will get you up in the organization. The higher you go, the more people oriented you need to become.
I love that. It's true. I see a lot of I saw the young leaders who were very egocentric and high energy and wanted to move up. And they, like you said, I liken it to like a bottle rocket. They were very loud, they moved very quickly, but then they popped and they didn't make it all the way. And what I saw, the ones that were more successful, was they focused on doing the job that they were in is extremely well, right, and deliver on their objectives, whether you're a small team, a department, a division, an organization. You did your job really well. I always hated that expression, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. I hated that. I've always said to that, do the job you have really well. That's what you should be focusing on. You've been asked to do a job, a department, a division, whatever, do that job really well. And as to your point, the people will, if you do really well, people are going to recognize that, and your people are going to push you to the top, not you and your ego and your drive.
Building on what you're saying, I'm writing my second book right now. Actually, I'm working on that. And just this morning, I was working, and this is a very recent thought that I developed, and I would like to share with you and your audience. You know, I noticed that, potential has stages. The
Hmm.
first stage of potential is really skills driven, and again, it's your craft. You have to have that. You have to be good at something, and you have to really, create a very uh, excellence in the craft and being good at something. It's mindset driven. It actually comes to, what kind of identity I see from myself and pursue, and that fuels, my engagement and my growth mindset to continue. And the third level, it's your essential qualities, what you really resonate with deep in your heart. It has a lot to do with purpose, as you were saying, your purpose, but it goes beyond that. I think purpose, and I've been mentoring many individuals. It's sometimes very difficult to identify. For those people who know their purpose, I really congratulate them,
Hmm.
and I think that, just go for it. But it takes a lifetime sometimes to understand what you're supposed to do. So you restart small, what brings you joy, what makes your day significant, what things you really engage with. And then when you start to resonate with that essential quality, and think about it, you're building on your skills, and then your mind, your perspective, and then what resonates with you, all of a sudden you are compounding and you're really getting into another position. And then the very last one, of course, is when you kind of take a level of maturity where, I don't know, like these brilliant composers and artists and creatives, that they say, I'm not, I'm just kind of channeling. Sometimes, that these sports people, that, Michael Jordan would say, I don't know what is happening, I just play, and I don't even think about, when I perform. It's
Yeah.
just that you reach a level of excellence where everything just flows naturally. So
Yeah.
I really think that, you start with your skills, then mindset, then of course identify what resonates with you, build on that, and all of a sudden you will just take off.
Wow, that's great. I love that. It's great advice for young leaders thinking about their careers, thinking about their goals. That's a great way to think of it. Well, this Ernesto, this has been fantastic, and really, we sort of scratched the surface of what you've done in this book and your career. But what final message would you like to leave with our listeners?
When I have, the more I study potential, the more I understand that it's really difficult to identify potential. It's a horizon which that moves. So what I would encourage people to think is, potential is always, it's a lifetime endeavor and it's introspective. And you have to build the compound effect. It's marvelous. So build on what you have and don't stop doing that. And of course, the willingness to change, it's vital because, I mean, if you live, with the things that you're used to and you're not open to experiment and learn, you will never, move that much. But I would encourage people to really look. Leadership is an inside out endeavor. It's from yourself to the world. So, think about, what makes you tickle and what really helps you succeed and start from there. It's difficult, but at the same time, I mean, this is the life journey, right? I mean, that's what we're supposed to do, to find what we're good at and do it. So I really would like to leave that idea. Potential, it's really a search, that comes from within and then express into the world.
I love that. Leaders, I hope you take that to heart because that's a very good advice from someone who's been doing it for a long time. Ernesto, this has been fantastic. How can our listeners find out more about you, this new book called Regrowth, and your company?
Well, the book is called Regrowth, and you can find it in Amazon. Just write Ernesto Gomez books, because if you write Regrowth, there are all kind of products that pump up. Or put. Also, you can visit my website, which is aspenmindset1.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Ernesto Gomez, and write me a message. I would love to, interact and engage with your audience. So I'm there and I'm available.
Oh, fantastic. I love it. We're going to have the links for all of Ernesto's resources in the show notes below. So if you had a question and something maybe stood out to you in this discussion, maybe you're young and you're thinking about your career and you've got a question for Ernesto, follow the links below. Reach out to Ernesto. He's going to help you. He's the expert. He's been doing it a long time. And I highly encourage you to pick up the book, Regrowth. We have a link in the show notes here. It's going to be an excellent book. It's going to be a great resource to help you bring out and get the most out of your team. Again, if you're running at a 50% potential with your employees, especially if you're an entrepreneur, you're in real trouble. So you need to get a lot higher than 50% out of your folks if you want to be successful in this journey, because being an entrepreneur is tough. Having your own business is tough. You need 100% of your people all the time. So it's really critical. If you have 10 employees and you're only getting 50%, you've lost half your workforce. That is a big deal. So you need to take this seriously. I highly encourage you to pick up this book, Regrowth, and it's going to help you get the most out of your team. Ernesto, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for all that you're doing and the work that you're doing, this book that you've written. Thanks for coming on the show and sharing your experiences.
No, thank you. It's been a great conversation. Thank you for having me.
Thank you again. Well, that is it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is Jon Rennie saying take care and lead well.